Good morning and welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for April 21st, 2016. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. At this time, we would like to ask that any member of the audience that has a cell phone, please turn it to silent or turn it off. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Consent calendar has items 1 through 13, and this group may be approved as a whole. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 6, 16 PD 015. Item 7, 16 PD 016. Item 8, 16 PD 017. And item 10, 16 UR 007. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Community Planning and Development Services Department by the close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 13 staff would like removed from the consent calendar?
Yes, items 4 through 9 and item 13.
Are there any items that any planning commissioner would like removed from the calendar for separate consideration? And are there...
Approve with items 4 through 9 and 13 removed?
Second.
Just wanted to check if there are any items that the audience needs to remove. I have no speaker requests for any other items not removed. Steve made the motion to approve. Karen seconded items 1 through 3 and 10 through 12. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4.
Thank you, Chair. If we could take items 4, 5, and 6 concurrently, please.
Yes.
Items 4, 5, and 6 are a rezone, vacation of right-of-way, and a final plan development. The rezone from medium-density residential district to general commercial district. All of this is part of a final plan development plan for property located southwest of the intersection of East North Street and La Crosse Street. The applicant is proposing to develop redevelop the old Colonial Inn property with a new convenience store with gas sales. If I could take you through some slides. This is the location of the property. The portions of white that are underneath the hatched area there are the areas of the alleyway that are being proposed to be vacated. And the portions of property located south of the alleyway between East Denver Street on the alleyway are zoned medium density residential district, which does not allow convenience store with gas sales as a permitted use. It is currently developed with the Colonial Inn, which is not a permitted use in the medium density residential district either. It's currently legal non-conforming. Those are the portions of the property they're proposing to rezone. Aerial view of the property, as you can see, the Colonial Inn takes up the majority of the site. There's a single-family residence that will be redeveloped as a part of this, as well as the office building located on East North Street, which is no longer there. Future land use shows the property as a mix of mixed-use commercial and urban neighborhood located at the intersection of 2 revitalization corridors on the comprehensive plan. Those revitalization corridors are also principal arterial streets. I look at the existing conditions today, the existing structures, and the proposed development. They're proposing a 5,000 square foot convenience store to be located on the south side of the collective properties with 7 gas pumps, or 7 stations totaling a total of 14 pump stations located north of the alleyway. As part of this, they're proposing to vacate that alleyway and retain it out as a public utility and access easement so that access to that alleyway is retained across the block, but that those portions of the eastern alleyway are proposed as a part of this development. They've also got some outdoor seating and I should note that they are not seeking any exceptions. They've got a 25-foot setback to East Denver Street, minimum required. They were also maintaining a 25-foot setback here along property to the west. That will be critical information for you in a moment. A landscaping plan. The thing to notice here is they are providing a landscape screening to be located along the southern property line adjacent to East Denver Street, and they're also proposing a landscape screening and screening fence to be located along the western property line here. This is of note because we have received one letter in opposition to this request, or these requests collectively, from property owner with property adjacent to that western property line, with concerns about safety and the clientele and the type of business that's going to be operated. As a part of this review, the Rapid City Police Department did take a close look at this, and they're strongly in favor of the redevelopment of this site, believing that this new development could decrease the number of calls that they do receive for this location, which is pretty high today. I'll look at the elevations for the proposed store. It's a Mavericks. Their signage is in compliance with the requirements of the Rapid City Municipal Code. You should note here that they are not proposing any LED signage as a part of this application, rather, or except for those standard gas price numbers, which are generally done in LED, but not considered an LED message center, as you might see in another convenience store. So look at the property at East Denver and LaCrosse Street. The signs are placed here, I should note, because there's no permeable surface on the north side, so we couldn't get any signs on in there. Look at LaCrosse. I'll look at East Denver, east of the property. LaCrosse looking south. East Denver looking east across the property. The existing alleyway. East-north on LaCrosse looking into the site. Looking east on East North Street. North on LaCrosse. East North Street looking to the west. Another look into the site from the west side of the property. This would be the location of the former office building, and the alleyway from the other direction looking to the east. One last shot looking at the property. We pulled these items off consent for you today so that we could notify you of the letter in opposition we received for this request. You have a copy of that on the dais. Staff, given the location of this at the intersection of two principal arterial streets that are also identified as revitalization corridors in the district, we believe that the rezone and the associated planned development will offer some revitalization to this neighborhood and potentially improve a property which has been seen as blighted and troublesome for quite some time. And with that, staff is recommending that these three applications be approved with the stipulations noted in the staff report. We do have a representative from Mavericks available to answer any questions at this time, and staff is available for questions as well.
Thank you, Robert.
I would move to approve.
Steve made the motion to approve items 4 through 6 per staff recommendations. Jan seconded. Any discussion on that motion from the Planning Commission? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 7 is a major amendment to a plan development to add 30 skilled nursing beds to the Good Samaritan Assisted Living Facility out at St. Martin's. And with that, I will show you some slides. The property is currently zoned medium-density residential and is in a planned development. An aerial of the property in the very northwest corner. There's some open land, and that would be the location of the one-story structure that's being proposed and the parking area for those 30 skilled nursing units. The future land use plan shows us as an urban neighborhood development. This use is identified as a use that would be appropriate for that designation. St. Martin's is a collector street. It runs to the north and to the west of the property. This shows the footprint of the building, and then it's got parking within this area. A little close-up of that. And this is a grading plan that shows how the drainage will be accommodated as a result of this additional development to the site. Should note that the reason we pulled this from consent is that we have received some concerns from the Kirkwood Meadow Homeowners Association regarding existing drainage issues at the corner of City Springs Road and Mountain Springs Lane. They're here today and they would like to speak to the issue. I don't think that they have an issue with the use. I think that it's something that we see would be appropriate as an expansion for the assisted living facility. There will be a future phase 4, and that will be 30 additional beds, but for those of you that aren't aware, the state has to approve additional nursing rooms throughout the state itself, and they did get permission for 30, and they've gotten permission for 30 more, but that will be in the future. This is the one-story structure. It will have similar design schematics as the existing facility that's there today, and it'll be to the right of that building as you're looking at the photo. And again, that's the area that it would be constructed in. That's the Terra Sancta facility for the Catholic Church in the background. This is looking to the north across St. Martin's. And this is looking east along St. Martin's. Looking into the site, and you can see the sign has been posted. Again, looking into the site and the area that for the construction. And that's the existing development that we spoke of earlier. This is looking south down St. Martin's. So having said that, I just wanted to introduce you to where the Good Samaritans is with this project. It's a part of a master plan. They've identified this as phase 3 of a 4-phase development from the onset when they first brought it in. We do have the engineer for the applicant here in the audience that is available to speak to the drainage concerns, and the city engineering division is also prepared to speak to it. You may want to take some comments from the homeowners association first to see what their issues are, and then let the engineers address those. If you have any questions for me, otherwise staff is recommending that this item be approved as identified in the project report. And please note that all drainage and erosion and sediment control must be addressed as a part of the building permit.
Thank you, Vicki. I do have a speaker request from Lyle Grubel. Lyle, would you like to speak?
My name is Lyle Grubel. I am the president of the Kirkwood Homeowners Association. It consists of 79 units, ranging in price from 150 to over 300,000.
Lyle's asked that I put up some pictures that he sent, so if you'll give us just a moment.
I'm going to show you some pictures of the drainage problems that we have had and have tried to work with. These were taken in 2012 off of Google Earth. That's how the complex looked like before the development started. It was clean, orderly. We kept it that way. We kill all the weeds and what have you because it is part of our association. Okay, the next picture I will show you. Which was taken on Sunday a year ago. Okay, this has taken 3 years to get this far. And working with the city, they came in and cleaned out the drainage culvert on the right because it had slid out quite a ways and was spraying over onto the concrete pylons that were put in later, and that had started to fall in. Our complaint, the association, was with the city. This is very, very visible, and we would like it leveled off so it looks better. The comment was made, we're only here to make the water drain. We're not here to beautify your property. Well, I kind of thought we only want it brought back the way it was for the last 20 years. I worked with Brandon, with the city. Now the city is going to come back in and they're going to level that off and put a cap block on it, so at least it looks a lot nicer. And then last summer the city did repair this storm drainage culvert to the right. Now that culvert drains everything from the streets, off of the streets, all the way up to the Good Samaritans. So it is taking a higher flow, which is no problem. It's a matter of all the silt, garbage bags, cans, whatever, that swept down with it during that construction, and it all ended up either here, or I'll show you the next picture. This is how it looks now, just below, between Galena and City Springs Road. The city has said that they started out, they said they would come in and clean it out, put in a fabric and plant it to grass. I had conversation with Brandon to the effect, if we do that, there is some groundwater there because there's a spring runs underneath it. We've never seen any of that water over the last 20 years because the rock covered it up, and it was fine. It always looked dry, even though there was a little bit standing there. That spring surfaces down below by the apartments, runs 24/7, and always has. And I said to Brandon, I said, well, if you plant grass in there, it's not going to, it won't, it'll kill it, the water will. We wanted rock put back in like it was before. The reason the rock is gone, the city tried to level that out a year ago, and they took out 2 loads of silt and rock that had washed down from the Good Samaritans and St. Martin's. Thus, we've got the mess here that we have now. We do not have any problem with the amendment, with what the Good Samaritans are doing, but we want assurance from somebody that this will be repaired back to what it was before and has been for a long time. We want to know when the drainage ditches will be returned to the condition that they were 3 years ago before the subdivision started. And quite frankly, who's going to pay for it? I do not think the Homeowners Association should have anything to do with that. We didn't cause any of that problem. I think the construction caused it. Maybe it wasn't engineered right to abate any of the silt from coming down. I don't know what caused it, but we would like it cleaned up. And it's, like I say, it's been a 3-year process to try and get this done. The city now is kind of working with us. It's went through Dale Tech, Brenda Quiet, I believe it is, Brad Estes, the mayor. I mean, we've run the gamut on this. We're kind of to the end of a rope, guys. I just kind of wanted some assurance that it's going to be taken care of, and I want when and who's going to pay for it. I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubel. Any questions, comments from the Planning Commission? Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair. I would like to have the engineering staff talk about this, and so I can hear what their comments are.
Ted?
Thank you. Mr. Grubel's correct. He's been working with Dale Tech, Brandon Quiet. The stormwater utility maintenance crews have done some work out there to restore the hydraulics to that property through that channel. They are planning on working on that downstream part this summer, or spring and summer if it dries out some. Right now, it's seeping water, standing water. Go in there and do much more than hand work will create more of an issue, wreck it more than it is. So there are plans to do that, to keep working on that, to improve that structure, upstream structure, and try to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. I guess I cannot answer the timing on that. That'd be a question more for Dale and Brandon, but I have been assured that we are working, city is going to work as best they can to restore that to the hydraulic functioning, eliminate the erosion, try to make it work as well as it can, and do as much as reasonably possible to, or not reasonably possible, do as much to make it look as good as they can, knowing that it is a hydraulic feature. There will be water going through there. There has been for years. There still will be. There's a large drainage basin that flows through there. This is the kind of the confluence of it. So there is ongoing maintenance. We do have an entity in place. We have equipment, some equipment to continue to maintain that. It probably won't be returned to a pristine landscaped area, but we are working to make it function as best we can, and like I say, working on that.
Thank you, Ted.
Just to follow up, when you made the comment that it won't be back to the pristine condition it was, is there in the future a way that that can happen so that the folks can maintain that and keep it that way?
If I may. Part of the issue is that it's been landscaped with really fine landscape rock that is really hard to hold. Any flows or heavy rains drive that down into the channel. Putting that back will just increase the problem, so we'll be looking at putting more, I guess, substantial, sustainable erosion or flow materials, maybe heavier riprap, blanketing, try to return as much to grass, but that landscaping rock just isn't suitable in the bottom of that channel, so it won't quite, to be able to put that back wouldn't be beneficial to the property owners, to the city, because it's not a sustainable material. So we're looking at some other options to use different materials, so it probably won't match as well. It won't all be that small, fine rock like it was for quite a while.
Okay, thanks, Ted.
I had one question, Ted. When the original Good Samaritans project was built, there was a large detention facility. I don't know if I'm using the right words, built at the south end of that, and maybe Jerry will answer this too, but was that designed for all the phases of this project? Or is there any further work coming on that?
I would let Jerry talk to the specific hydraulics, but yes, that was designed, and I understand designed to handle all phases of Good Samaritan, and it has been designed to reduce the flows through there, to moderate them, meter them to a lower level.
Mr. Foster, Lyle, could you allow Mr. Foster to speak? Thank you.
Jerry Foster with FMG Engineering. We've been the civil engineers on this job starting in about 2008, more or less. We did an extensive drainage basin plan in 2010, submitted it to the city. It was also submitted to FEMA for their approval because there are some floodplain issues in the area. And the bottom line is, Good Samaritan is not asking to increase imperviousness in their project area beyond what was previously approved in the 2010 master plan. This skilled nursing was planned for in the project. In answer to Karen's question about could something be done in a channel to keep some stone characteristics, if you will, and I'd agree with Ted, landscaping rock is something that's not put in to drainage channels. It's highly erosive. That being said, you can still do a rock-type low-flow channel or a larger flow channel, more of a pilot channel thing for some of the more highly erosive flows, using a bigger rock so it has an appearance of a natural stony creek, if you will. So yes, some aesthetic design can be done in channels, to answer your question, Karen. Just some numbers on the detention pond. And Ted mentioned it, it's a very large drainage basin. Upstream of the box culvert that you were showing a picture of, the drainage basin is approximately 920 acres. It's a large drainage basin. Goes high to the ridge, or to the ridge tops on either side of the valley, goes a long ways to the north. Good Samaritan owns 193 acres of that drainage basin. Before Good Samaritan developed, or let me tell you this, without the Good Samaritan development, the imperviousness in that basin would have been more or less 5%. Pretty small imperviousness in the basin. Good Samaritan, when you add them in, it adds less than 2% imperviousness to the basin. I mean, it's a big basin. They did lots of open space. I mean, I know for a fact there were other folks wanting to stick, I'll call it Robbinsdale type development in that basin. Good Samaritan stepped up and said, we're going to keep a lot of open space. And I mentioned they only increased imperviousness by a small amount, less than 2% in the overall basin. In theory, they would have only had to build very small detention ponds. But they worked with the city. They stepped up to the plate, knowing there were some downstream problems. In fact, there's one or two twin homes in Kirkwood Meadows that the floor elevation is actually lower than the roadway downstream at the box culvert we were just looking at. If that road would fill up, there would be water back into a couple townhouses in Kirkwood Meadows because they're built too low. So Good Samaritan recognized that in conjunction with the city and said, we will work with the city to fulfill the city's drainage master plan in the basin, which was the city had recognized these problems for twin home flooding in Kirkwood Meadows, and they needed to build very large detention ponds, much larger than Good Samaritan would have needed to do on their own. And I'm going to bore you with some numbers here. And, you know, I can talk stormwater all day if you guys got all day.
We don't have all day, so try
It's
to
what I do.
please wrap it up.
Anyway, these are the numbers from our analysis. Prior to Good Samaritan developing their project, at their south property line, which is then would be the north property line of Kirkwood, the 2-year storm, which don't say that can only happen once every 2 years. That's a number that means it has a 50% chance of occurring in any given year. A 100-year storm, when I say that, that doesn't mean it can only happen once every 100 years. Galen will tell you it has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. Okay, the numbers are kind of misleading, but it's what the industry's used. So, before Good Samaritan started their project, the analysis said at their south property line or the Kirkwood north property line, the 2-year storm would have 6 CFS coming down. And again, numbers you might not understand flows, but these are all relative. The 100-year would have been 480 CFS, plus or minus. That would have been a number that if that came down that canyon before Good Samaritan developed, hit that box culvert, we would have had water backing into townhouses at Kirkwood Meadows. The city had recognized this many years ago. So they had established targets for the 2-year and the 100 years of 11 on the 2-year storm, which was an increase over what would have happened before Good Samaritan. They were going to knock the 100-year storm down to 170 CFS. Remember I said existing pre-development was almost 500. So It takes a lot of dams to hold that much water back. So Good Samaritan stepped up, worked with the city, donated the land to the city for these ponds, and they reduced the 2-year storm down to 3 CFS, which is less than the analysis showed would happen before Good Samaritan, less than what the city wanted, and the 100-year storm essentially matched what the city wanted. So they were truly Good Samaritans and stepped up to the plate. Their percent imperviousness increase in the basin is relatively small. Downstream of the Good Samaritan Society, as an example, 13% of the basin imperviousness is created upstream of the box culvert to Good Samaritan's property line. So that's a bigger percentage than Good Samaritan actually contributed. Now, it's our understanding, again, the city is working with these folks to work with their drainage area. You know, again, we're just asking for approval to construct what's previously been approved. We're not asking for anything more than was previously approved. There will be a stringent erosion and sediment control plan on this future project. So that's a long, short answer, Eric.
Well, it answered my question. Any further from the commission? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Karen moves to approve. Linda seconds. With the stipulations. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 8 is a final plan development to allow for an apartment development to be located in the northwest corner of Country Road and Haynes Avenue. We pulled this from consent because we became aware of a property owner that had some concerns with the development. So we just thought it'd be best to introduce the project to you folks and kind of let them see too a little bit about the history of how we got to where we're at today. There we go. So the property is currently zoned medium-density residential. You'll see Country Road to the south, Haynes Avenue to the east. It is a part of what is known as Caitlin's subdivision. Several years ago, a developer came in and he wanted to do what was known as an experimental subdivision. He put everything to the west of the lot that's hatched into a planned development and requested that the city allow a residential development with reduced setbacks, reduced lot sizes, and an increase in lot coverage as an experimental subdivision. As a part of that master plan, he identified as this lot as a multifamily lot. So from the get-go, we have known that in the future, somewhere down the road, either he or whoever he sold it to would be coming in with an apartment development. That is a permitted use in the medium-density residential district. The only reason that we have this before you today is that instead of doing one large building, the applicant's trying to keep it into 2 smaller buildings, and in a residential zoning district, you can only have one principal structure. Therefore, he's placed it in a planned development. If you went with one larger apartment building, that it would just be a building permit. You wouldn't be seeing this item at all. The property as it sits today, it's vacant. It's identified as low-density residential, urban neighborhood on the city's future land use plan. And as a part of our comprehensive plan, it's important to note, and something that we've tried to seek throughout all areas of our city, is that mix of land use, where we don't have just exclusively single-family and then huge areas of apartment development. It's important that we mix townhomes, single-family, and apartments as best we can throughout all areas of our community. Country Road is a collector street, and Haynes Avenue is an arterial street. The apartments will serve as a buffer between the existing single-family homes to the west and Haynes Avenue, which is the arterial street and carries quite a volume of traffic, to the east. The buildings, one is to the north and one is to the south. The area in between would then be the parking lot for the development. There are no exceptions being requested as a part of this. There are 3-story structures, which is allowed in medium-density residential. They are also proposing a 20-unit storage building that would allow storage for all of the tenants so that you don't see anything on the exterior. They are providing landscaping in excess of what is required. And there is going to be one ground sign as a part of this. This is just to identify the height to show that it does not exceed what would be allowed in the medium-density residential district. And that's the storage unit that I spoke of. It'll be 1 story. This is looking into the site, from Country Road looking north. Again, looking into the site. These are the single-family homes that are across the street. And you can see that they do sit closer to the front of the lot line than what you would typically see in a residential development. Looking north, again looking into the site, and that would be south along Country Road. This is across on Haynes Avenue. This is looking down Haynes and the other direction on Country Road, looking east. So, having said that, we understand that there are those in the neighborhood that are concerned with the apartments going in and what that might do with the value of their property. What we've determined through having these kinds of uses be introduced into other areas that are typically residential is it doesn't devalue their homes. It won't impact what the assessor's office determines as the value of their property. It is a permitted use, again, trying to keep it more appropriate for the area. The applicant has proposed to do 2 smaller structures than 1 large one, which appears to be more appropriate. He is in the audience today, the developer, and he's done several of these apartment units north of this site in a residential development that he's also developing. And you've seen several of them over the years, and he does some very nice structural development for his apartment buildings. So with that, we are recommending that it be approved with STIPs. We encourage you to take comment from the neighborhood and maybe from the developer.
Thank you, Vicki. I've got a speaker request from James Souter. I hope I got your last name right.
Yeah, close enough.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is James Sauter. I own a single-family home in the Caitland subdivision at 4220 Roberta Street. I'm within 250 feet of the proposed development. I am strongly against the building of the 2 3-story apartment buildings that have been proposed in the lot at the entrance to my neighborhood. When I purchased my home in 2012, I was drawn to the Caitland subdivision by its appearance. It stands out over the other neighborhoods that you see as you drive on Haynes in the Mall Ridge area. There is already a nice mix of single-family homes and multifamily dwellings. But at the entrance of the neighborhood, the first thing you see are the newer single-family homes. It's a newer group of homes that makes the neighborhood, in my opinion, visually the nicest looking neighborhood in the area. That appearance is what drew me to invest in that neighborhood. To obstruct that view of this idyllic little neighborhood with 2 3-story structures right at the entrance, I believe would absolutely be awful, and I believe it will negatively affect our property values as well. It's not having the apartments there, it's the appearance of them as you drive by there, because you're not going to see that little neighborhood behind it very well. My neighborhood has 2 very nice apartment buildings already at the west end of our little subdivision. They are fine. They're part of our neighborhood without blocking the view of it. Please don't allow 2 bigger buildings to obstruct the view of one of the nicest neighborhoods in the Mall Ridge area. Putting these buildings in that lot at the entrance would absolutely do just that. I am all for the development of that field at the entrance to the Caitland subdivision, but another row of nice single-family homes would be a nicer addition. They would not hurt the property values like the apartment buildings, I believe, would, and more importantly, they would add to the beauty of the nicest neighborhood in the Mulridge area, as opposed to taking away from that beauty, which I believe would happen by this development. Please do not allow this proposed development of the apartment buildings to happen in my neighborhood. I went through the zoning laws, and I don't have a leg to stand on here. They're doing everything that is by the book allowed there in that neighborhood. I just wanted you to hear what I had to say. To me, when I drove through that neighborhood when I was house hunting, it looked like a little diamond in the rough. A nice little idyllic neighborhood where you saw those single-family homes that were newer, much newer than what is normally in that neighborhood, with the little front porches and picket fences, and that's what drew me to that neighborhood, and I don't want to take that appearance away. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have a request from Alana Turnbaugh.
Hi, I'm Alana Turnbaugh. I live at 4211 Caitlin. I'm the first house on Caitlin Street. Okay, so every morning I get up and I see that beautiful area looking out towards Ellsworth Air Force Base. My concerns is the congestion of traffic flow and the congestion of getting out on Haynes Avenue and West Country Road. It is terrible as it is. I cannot get snow plows down my street because it's dead end. Those are my concerns, is that it's going to block our view, it's going to congest the area, and then there's no place for those children to play. They didn't even offer a play area on the site. And we don't need them running around the neighborhood, because it's going to be multifamily living there, and all these children. Are they going to play on the street, in the parking lots? Where? That's my concern. And then I have an 11-year-old son, and he plays right there. That's all we need, is more congestion in that area on a street that's dead end within 5 houses. And then we're going to have all these people coming in and parking on the street and stuff. I could just see accident after accident happening, especially trying to get out on Haynes Avenue. It's hard. You've got Haynes and Country Road, and then you got another street down here, I can't think of the name, and then Lyons, and everybody's turning on the same street. Is city going to put up a light there? And then the flow of our sewer drainage, are they going to correct that too? Because we already have some slow drains. I don't know what's going on. My concern again is the congestion, and I would prefer it not to be a 3-story building blocking that view. And 2, I sort of agree in dividing it into 2 because then you'll have space in between it, but I just can't see all those people in that one little block. Because if you saw the plans, there's no other way to get in or out of that apartment complex, just on Caitlin Street. So those are my concerns. I would prefer that it didn't go through like that, that there maybe be other solutions. I'm just really worried about the congestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Rollinger.
I understand, people views and stuff like that, but if you don't own the property in front of you, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, somebody owns that property, they can come build what they want. I understand that. But I do have a question about the traffic, though, because I actually live east of that, and I come out on Bengal Drive, and to get onto Haynes Avenue, it is a pain in the butt in the morning. And I only see one way in and out of that location right now. And then you have to come around, go into the apartment. So are you going to give them an access down at the other end? I mean, something has to be done to allow traffic to come in and out of there, or you just have a standstill sitting there. I don't have a problem with the apartment, but I'd like an answer on how we're going to address the traffic flow, because it is a problem now, and that's going to create a bigger problem.
Vicki?
Thank you. So when this came in as a master plan for Caitlin subdivision, the original developer had to look at that, and the road sections today are designed to accommodate the build-out of this site. Based on the size of this lot, it was anticipated that a maximum of 27 apartment units could be located at this site. They're proposing 24. The existing design standards for the streets as they stand today should accommodate the traffic that would be in addition to what's there. And granted, we all experience coming out of our residential areas, hitting those arterial streets and having those delays when you're crossing the lanes of traffic. I think we very seldom see an application before us where we don't have someone from the neighborhood cite that as a concern. There's no warrants here for a signal. This didn't trigger that a traffic impact study be provided. It's just too small of a project, and it was anticipated as a part of the master plan that this would be an apartment complex at that time.
Thank you. Steve, follow? Any other questions, comments from the Planning Commission on this item? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion on it. Karen made the motion to approve with stipulations. Second. Jan seconded. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. Item number 9.
Thank you. Item number 9 is 16 RZ011, a request to rezone property from Central Business District to the General Commercial District. This is for 0.56 acres of property located southeast of the intersection of Columbus Street and Mount Rushmore Road, commonly known as the former location of Thimble Cottage, near the downtown. The property is currently zoned Central Business District today. As you can see, it's on the fringes of the downtown area. So we do have some General Commercial District located to the east, Central Business District to the north, the west, and to the south. This aerial view of the property, Thimble Cottage is a building and a property that I think most residents in Rapid City know fairly well. It has been vacant for some time though. It's shown as downtown on the city's comprehensive plan, but also located along a revitalization corridor in Mount Rushmore Road. Again, it is on the fringes of the downtown area. And Mount Rushmore Road is a principal arterial street on the city's major street plan. Not being reviewed as a part of this request to rezone, but something that the applicant was gracious enough to provide for us. The applicant is proposing to develop the property with a coffee shop, which would include one drive-through lane. Drive-through is not a permitted use in the Central Business District. The coffee shop is. And as such, the applicant is proposing to provide the, is requesting to rezone the property in order for them to have the drive-through. When staff was reviewing this application, we noted some concerns. We wanted to ensure that we didn't have situations similar to other coffee shops, drive-throughs in the city that created issues with traffic. Looking at the size of the proposed building, looking at the circulation that they provided, shows that they do not trigger a traffic impact study for that type of development on this property, and that the site should circulate and function appropriately to keep traffic flowing throughout the site. As you can also see here, this is Mount Rushmore Road. The applicant is not proposing any accesses off of Mount Rushmore Road. State DOT did take a look at this as well and noted that it didn't trigger a traffic impact study from their perspective as well. The reason we bring this to you today is because the applicant has, or we have received some notification this morning that there is some opposition, not so much to the rezone, but to the proposed drive-through. So this is a potential site plan, not being reviewed as a part of this, but the applicant did want to note that they believe that the drive-through would be disruptive to the neighborhood, to the calm and quiet of the area. It should be noted here that the drive-through lane is proposed as nearer to Mount Rushmore Road than to the residential development located south and east of the property. So you would think that that would be washed out by the noise just in general associated with Mount Rushmore Road and buffered by the building as well. Look with the sign posted on the property, the corner of East, North, and Columbus. Looking towards Mount Rushmore Road and the ongoing construction, and looking east on Columbus towards Rapid City High School. South on Mount Rushmore Road, and north on Mount Rushmore Road. Look inside the site, there's an alley adjacent on the north property line. from the, would be the southeast corner of the property looking into the site, and from the northeast corner of the property looking into the site. We did want to give the person in opposition or with concerns about the request an opportunity to speak. He's available for questions if you have them at this time. But staff is recommending that this rezone from Central Business District to General Commercial District be approved. And staff is available for questions at this time.
Thank you, Robert. I've got a speaker request form from Reverend Chris Russell.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Thank you very much. My wife and I purchased the property. I'm sorry. My name is Chris Russell. I'm a resident at 717 South Street, which is right near this property that we're speaking of. I'm also the rector of Emmanuel Episcopal Church at 717 Quincy Street. So this property exists right between the church and our home. When my wife and I purchased the home in 2014, it was our hope and desire to help kind of revitalize the downtown area in terms of residential folks being interested and drawn into the downtown area. Even though we're right kind of on the edge technically of downtown. We appreciate and understand the cooperation that needs to exist between commercial properties and residential properties when they live next door to each other. And I have no objection whatsoever to commercial development, specifically of that property. My objection, as was noted by the staff members, is to the potential noise pollution that could come from the use of drive-through window. So that's our objection. We enjoy sitting on our front porch and enjoying the beautiful weather here. I also worry about whether or not the decibel level will interfere with church services on Sunday morning, if that would be audible, loud enough for us to hear within the church during our church services. So would love to see the property developed. No objection to Caribou Coffee coming in, but have deep concerns over the noise level. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Any questions or comments from Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a question for Vicki, I think. Once this is rezoned and the application comes through, will it come back to us, or would just need a standard building permit?
It'll just be a building permit.
Okay. During the time of the building permit, will they address then the buffering areas and that kind of thing as far as the neighbors?
So I think what you saw today, which was in excess of what would be required as a part of a rezone application, is a site plan that showed how it would lay out. There are noise regulations within the city that in a normal residential area, there is a decibel level that can't be exceeded, and I believe it's somewhere between 60 and 75. Without looking at the ordinance closer, I couldn't tell you specifically. They could not exceed that, and if they did, a complaint could be filed, and code enforcement would then pursue that and remind them to tone that down. The good news is that in the audience today, you have representatives for the project here, and they're well aware that this was an item we were going to pull and why we were going to pull it, and maybe some conversation with them would better answer how that's going to be regulated.
Okay. I hate to see that nice building be torn down because it's kind of an icon, but I also understand that it's hard to be used and it's constantly turnover of people coming and going through that property. And I also think that a nice coffee shop downtown with a bakery or something like that would be really helpful, because there's not, other than the bagel shop, there's not a lot of things like that downtown, and I think that would be helpful to people who traverse that area. But I am concerned about the street as far as it goes to the school, it goes to a lot of places through there, and that's a fairly heavily trafficked area. And so I'm a little concerned with a drive-through as far as the traffic, and also making sure that it's buffered for the neighbors. And so those are just my concerns, but I support the rezone.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
if I might, So it is rare that you'll see an application to go from the central business district to the general commercial district, because in central business, you can build to the borders of the lot and you provide no parking on site and no landscaping. So we were surprised when this application did come in. What we did, the components of this site that we did like is that there's an outdoor patio area to encourage those that live in the area to walk over. Now we've got that pedestrian mix onto the site, something that our comprehensive plan is encouraging. And as a part of the building permit itself, we've worked with the applicants, and we will get a traffic statement with that application to ensure that the stacking will not impact the traffic flows on the adjacent streets, as we've seen in a different coffee shop just down the road. So they've been wonderful to work with in that regard. I do appreciate the comment that was made today by the Reverend, and it's something that we all need to take into account when we're looking at any use that's in close proximity to residential, because those speakers can be loud and they can reverberate and whatnot, and it's something we all need to be aware of. And so I'm glad that the applicants are here, and hopefully that gets that conversation going, and we can make sure that's not a problem for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Vicki. Steve?
Again, like the last project, the traffic, and I think you're probably talking about Starbucks down the road, because I've been there trying to get through that place and onto the road, and it is an absolute nightmare. You got people coming trying to get to the light, and you get this tiny little turn you're trying to get your car around, which is how I got approved, I have no idea. But this one here, I'd almost rather you dumped it onto Mount Rushmore Road, because again, you're going to dump it onto a little street, and there's no way they're going to get on the Mount Rushmore. And you talked about on the last project, well, we all have that issue. Not quite. I've lived in a lot of places in town, and certain places are worse than others. And you got to live there to know that feeling. So I understand when people come in and talk about traffic, but I love the idea. As of Karen, I don't see that building as, I see the building as an eyesore. I'm kind of glad we're going to come in and put something nice there and something new, so I agree with that. But I do understand is the concern, and I had that concern, especially after having been to the place down the road where you can't get in and out. So I'm hoping that as you looked at this plan, it looks like it's a little, I'm trusting the city that it's smoother after that last debacle we had down there. I'm thinking you probably looked at this pretty hard. And I love the idea of a coffee shop coming in there. I like drive-throughs, so but I understand the noise level too. But hopefully you've taken a look at this, and I trust you guys, so. I said the name because I think it had to be said.
Thanks, Steve. Any further comments on this item? Questions? I don't see any. A motion. Galen made the motion to approve with stipulations. Mark seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 13.
Good morning. This is an appeal by the applicant from the Tax Increment Financing Committee. They did not recommend approving an amendment to an existing tax increment district. I'm going to go through the district that's been approved already just a bit so that you've got some background, and then go through. I'm missing a keyboard. So this is tax increment district number 70. It was approved in 2008, and the applicant is proposing an amendment. You might have some question about why we would amend a project plan, and I'll go through those pieces as well. As you might recall, we have recently approved 2 additional tax increment districts within this existing boundary, one here and then one here. And with an overlapping district, both of those districts, any revenue generated from any commercial improvements or residential improvements, that increment will go to pay this particular district first. Here's a copy of the public improvements map. They have already installed this sewer line, the sewer main, excuse me. They've improved Moon Meadows. They've made some improvements, some lane improvements in Highway 16. The traffic signal will not be installed until warrants are met, but they have put the base work in for that. This is just an aerial photo from 2015 where you can actually see where they did grade in the sewer line. Moon Meadows is constructed. And here's a picture of Moon Meadows. You can see the church to the west, and then some lane improvements here that they have also completed. This is a picture of the terminus of Moon Meadows looking to the north where the sewer line is located and the rough end grading. And then also another picture. One of the items that they are trying to amend is they want to add some additional costs for a regional detention pond, and you can see some of the locations where there may be some detention needed. And then this is a picture looking to the east from the terminus of Addison. You can see the sewer line location sort of in the middle of the picture there. And so this is the new public improvements map. They want to put a regional detention pond kind of to the north of the property on another individual's property, and then they also want to put a second regional detention pond sort of on their property on the north, and then the adjacent property to the north. And so one of the things that we look at when you consider an amendment is if they want to add a specific project cost that was not originally approved, one of the issues that we would have to consider is that we would redetermine the base valuation. And that's important because the base valuation actually, anything over that base valuation is what's used as part of that increment to pay this off. This is part of the preliminary review. Just to note, the revenues that are identified here on this page include both the two TIFs that were just recently approved. And then also this is actually the revenue from the applicant's proposed project. They do anticipate a 160-unit apartment structure that they are working on currently. And this is actually the heart of what they want to do. What they want to do is they want to shift some of the existing costs that they have incurred based on these are the approved costs and these are the proposed changes that they would like to make. We have consistently seen, excuse me, developers that have a tax increment district when they expend items. We have seen them come in and adjust those line items to account more closely to what their actual expenditures were. And so that's very common. This is a less common item where they are adding the additional project costs for the regional detention ponds. They do anticipate that those ponds will cost about $218,000. And so here's a copy of the site plan for the apartments that they anticipate constructing. Mount Rushmore, or Highway 16, Mount Rushmore Road is located over to the west. This connection here would be Healing Way, and it does connect up to Catron Boulevard eventually. And so this is a copy of the two other tax increment districts, just so that you can see their general location. This is a very detailed spreadsheet, but this identifies the revenues specifically for Buffalo Crossing. This is the revenues generated for tax increment district number 70 and that Hague Developers, and this is the revenues generated from Black Hills Corp. So this next slide is just a blow up of those two, that spreadsheet that we had seen before. This area here is really where we have a combined revenue projection. And so within the next 4 years, we should see the revenue projections to be at about a little over $1 million. And so with a tax increment district, we have to look at how those revenues are actually going to pay off any additional costs and the costs that have already been approved. This is the revenue projection for tax increment district 70. The items that you see here, we would anticipate with all three of those, the tax increment districts, Black Hills Court, Buffalo Crossing, and the apartment complex for Hague Development, we do anticipate that this particular tax increment district number 70 to be paid out within about 4 years. And of course, you know, that's all dependent on the actual developments coming forward, but we base these estimates on what the applicants have submitted. And again, here is that state law that I referenced earlier. Here's the original base information, base valuation, and then the estimated base valuation for 2016, which is a 2015 valuation actually. And so the change in that base valuation is about $1.5 million, which is about a $35,000 revenue decrease if you were to amend the project as proposed. And so there's always a question about, you know, state law only allows a 10% total valuation for any cumulative tax increment district amounts. And today we are at 2.9. Of course, we have just approved 2 other districts, but with the approval of those 2 districts, now we're at about 3.2%. And so here's a little information for you. If you decide that you want to override the TIF committee's denial of this particular application, then we will come back before you with a revised project plan. You have the option of making changes to the proposal, and you also have the option of continuing it so that we can get additional information. If you deny this proposed amendment, then the applicant has the right to appeal to Legal and Finance Committee, and then that recommendation goes straight to council for their approval or consideration. And so again, here is, just in case you're interested, this is the Buffalo Crossing amortization schedule. You see there are no revenues generated for Buffalo Crossing until 2021. That's because all of these payments here go directly toward TID 70, which is the amendment that you're considering today. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But I know that the applicant is here and he would also like to share some information with you.
Jan, do you have a question for Patsy, or?
Yeah, I have a request. Could someone from the city explain to the public what tax increment financing means and the definition of blighted, please?
Can I go back just a little bit? I didn't mention this morning, but in 2011, the state law changed so that there's an additional definition in the section where the blighted actually occurs. Now you can approve tax increment districts if 50% or more of the property actually shows an economic benefit to the state as a whole. So it's not just a blighted definition that we consider anymore. And then, you know, for tax increments, let me just pull up a map so that we can look at, sorry.
Well, I've attended the classes and know what it means, and I also know that blighted includes lack of sewer or other kinds of delivery from the city. I'm worried that not about me or us, but no one's, the public doesn't seem to know what it means, and that money eventually comes back to the city, and all of the things that you see on page 2 for 2 cents for 4 or 5 sentences jammed together.
So I'm just going to draw a little picture here so that you've got an idea of what really the tax increment district is doing. So here is the base valuation that we talked about. Right now it's about $22 million. Any of the revenues generated over and above what currently exists as the base valuation, those revenues, this area right here, so, you know, as we have building permits issued and construction occurs and development occurs, there's always an increase generally from a vacant piece of property to, what's today. So if we have currently $100,000, that's our base valuation because, this is an easier number to use. And we build a structure that's worth $3 million. So the increment that actually is going to generate revenue is 2.9 because you subtract the $3 million for the new valuation of that property and you subtract out the base valuation. So that's really the area that generates the revenue. And from that, you have to identify a project plan. Those costs that are identified in the project plan, that's what's allowed for that increment to be used for revenue. So the incremental revenue goes to pay off those project plan costs. And generally, there's a 20-year time frame where you can generate revenues to pay off those approved costs. So did that help at all? Okay.
Thanks. I have a speaker request from Ken Haig.
Thank you, Patsy. My name is Kent Haig. I'm an attorney in Rapid City, also president of Altaterra Development Company, which is the developer on the original TIF 70. Just a little bit of background on that is that TIF 70, as Patsy mentioned, it was formed in, the district was formed in 2008 by a completely unrelated group. We purchased the land shortly, about commensurate with that actually, and just shortly before that, through some different deals after the Walmart project did not go through. But when 2008 hit, when the crash came, the project, the entire area, the project that was originally subject to the TIF, this proposed TIF district, was scrapped. Development was literally a four-letter word in trying to get funding and so forth, so it laid there for a while. In 2011, we took that up. We took the district and proposed a different project plan that was, we believe, more efficient, but still brought life to that southern corridor. As Patsy showed you, it now has sewer, water. It'll have a turn signal at Moon Meadows and Highway 16. I get positive comments about that about 3 or 4 times a week from people that live out that way, how nice it's going to be to have that. Also, since the time of the original project plan that was approved of ours, during the construction process, as I believe with most any major construction project, you're going to have changes, change orders, those type of things as the project matures and goes forward to completion. One of the biggest ones is the stoplight, the interchange, the deceleration and turn lanes, and the lighting that you may have noticed out there now. It's very, very well lit up and down Highway 16 and Moon Meadows. Much of that, although it was contemplated after it was designed, redesigned, then redesigned by DOT and so forth, it resulted in, I'm giving this boring background because it kind of explains why we have to ask for these realignment of costs from the original line item projections. With all those changes, for instance, the stoplight I think is now just under $600,000, and originally was projected to be $250,000. But this stoplight talks to the one down on Catron and Highway 16, so they're in sync. That was never contemplated when we were first going through it. So there's a number of things like that that create those cost reallocations. The good news is that in addition, or even in consideration of all the cost changes, it is still under the projected budget. With these reallocation, it'll be about $1.75 to $2 million under still, I think, the projected budget, if I recall. The interesting thing about it, though, is that when you add the project plan, something that wasn't specifically itemized, and that was the regional retention ponds. At the time in 2011, 2010, 2012, but mainly in 2011 when we were proposing, going through the line items and suggesting what this thing is going to cost and look like, we contemplated on-site water quality retention, so that every business that had, as you're probably familiar with, every business that had that wanted to go there would have to have its own little area of retention, treatment, etc., before it went to the basins. Well, that's as time went on, it became obvious that that was pretty inefficient because it creates potentially, 10, 15, 20 separate little retention ponds on private properties rather than these large regional ones. These two regional ponds are very important and became more and more obvious to us, especially after we started the project. It's my understanding that storm water quality control is huge. It has been for some time. However, with additional EPA guidelines and so forth, it became obvious that this is going to be even more critical. We shifted gears a bit to add these ponds. It became obvious again to us because when the sewer line was put in from Catron to Moon Meadows, it was brought to grade of what the future street would be, Healing Way. So that's all been designed because there had to be culverts that go under Healing Way, and those culverts would allow the natural drainage to continue to on its natural course, and they're positioned exactly to do that, and they are in. Also, you have much of your pond formed already, your ponds, because to raise the road for Healing Way and do the cut and fill and so forth, much of your size of your lake or much size of the retention pond have already been formed by and large. Drainage studies have been done. Flow studies have been done. So much of it was done. So I was understanding that the price is about $173,000 for the two ponds, but maybe about closer to 200. Give or take, which is a very small amount when you consider what the region is getting. This will provide regional drainage for the region, hence the name. But the regional drainage, because much of it's done and it's ready to go and there's still construction going on, it can be done very economically right now, far cheaper than it can ever be done in the future. And it can be properly metered, and most importantly, and it was reiterated to the TIF committee by Del Tech at the last meeting, is that these retention ponds are still exactly where they need to be according to the city's adopted stormwater drainage study. So it's doing exactly what the city's always wanted to do there, and so that we think we're willing to borrow the money to do that. We think the fact that there's growth in this area has been fantastic. When we first started this, we had no idea. We were optimistic, but we had no idea that Black Hills Power was going to do what it's doing. We had no idea that Buffalo Crossing would do what it would do. It was just the water slides at that time, which also played a part in making sure you had a conservative enough budget to make sure you get done what needs to get done, but not to overload it. It's very clear, as Patsy pointed out, that there will be ample tax dollars for this. One small but very personal indication of this, or not small, is that the land that we have will increase, the taxes will increase in 2017 1,800%. That's the beauty of tax increment, and it's also the pain. That's what happens. You go from ag to general commercial, ag, general commercial. And I defy anyone to look at my little chart right here and tell me that's not a lot, whether it's the school district or the public or whatever. But in 4 years, this incredible amount of money just from our projects and from Buffalo Crossings and from Black Hills Energy, that's going to be coming in. That's real growth. This is the poster child for what tax increment districts should be doing and should look like. Early retirement of the debt, massive amounts of increased revenues for the schools, for public services and opening up the gateway to Rapid City. This is something that we have always strive very hard to do, is try to protect want to protect the entrance to Rapid City and the exit to the Black Hills. This is a very, very important spot. We believe that with the restrictions that we're also putting on the PUD there, that is going to be a beautiful area. But I'd greatly appreciate your support. One interesting note from the TIF committee is that the school district, Dave Yannick, was there, and they did vote in favor of this, not only to the cost reallocation, which, like Patsy said, is fairly common, but also to these retention ponds. Black Hills Energy and Buffalo Crossing both support these ponds. We had this discussion early on with them when they came to us and asked if we would be in agreement for their TIF districts. Of course, it's great growth. So that's a little bit of, or a lot of more, probably a heck of a lot more history than you wanted. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to field them.
Great, thanks, Gil. I've got Galen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm having a hard time getting convinced if this is, first of all, we're talking about overriding the TIF committee, and I'll defer to Amanda here in a minute. Just maybe give us a little overview on what the TIF committee, what their thoughts were on this. But I agree, we need to have these regional detention ponds. I don't think anybody will object to that, but it's just a matter of how do you finance that. And to me, it seems like TIF should be used for areas that won't be developed without this TIF money. And I guess I'm not convinced that these are going to go through either way. Talking about the detention ponds, and I'm just not really convinced that I've heard enough to override the TIF committee. So I'd like to maybe hear from Amanda on what her thoughts are.
Steve?
Meeting. I made the one prior to that where Ken had spoke and I was in favor of it. I wasn't able to be there, otherwise I would have voted for it. And the difference, I think, Galen, is that when you look at projects as they go forward, you look at, like when we did the hockey rinks, we had the space there. We decided not to build that one. Now, if we ever build it again, it's going to cost us an outrageous amount of money. You go out to Catron Boulevard, the turning lane out there. They said, we're not going to need that right away. We end up paying tons more for it in the future because we did need it. Now we got a situation here where they can build those little ponds out there, and they're going to do that. They can build all these little ponds, but they looked at a way that, hey, look, in the future, as we're growing this area, we'll have these 2 detention ponds, and at some point in time, if we don't do it now, the city's going to pay for it. So here we got a way to do it, and it's not changing the overall cost. He said that they're coming in $1.7 million under, so we're using money to do it today at a tremendously reduced cost. If we have to do this, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, you can take that cost and you can just multiply that out. So I think we should do the project and do it right. And so I will be voting in favor of this. And again, I was on that TIF committee, and there are other members that voted for it as well. And I wasn't there, so Amanda can kind of bring us to the final vote. Thank you.
Got Linda up next.
My only question was the one pond didn't show that it was the land. Who owned the land that wasn't covered by the one pond? The pond was on some other person's land, the one that was more to the north. Has that been taken care of, and what's the plan for that? Or are you going to come back and ask for money for that? I'm just curious. I don't think so, but I would rather take care of everything at one time.
And thank you for asking that, because I meant to bring it up. We own the 40 acres that Moon Meadows goes through, and we're contributing, donating that land, and then the rest of that southern pond and the northern pond that you saw in there, that land is owned by the orthopedic clinic, and they are also agreed to donate that land because it makes a significant improvement for that whole area. And again, this is regional drainage. It handles drainage that's not even part of our district. I mean, that flows through it, but it also does take care of our district. It's truly regional in nature and certainly best for water quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to give a summary of what happened at the TIF committee meeting, Steve wasn't there, and so we did have 5 members that did vote. 2 represented the city, and the city 2 representatives voted no on this. And there was also a no vote from the county. And Mr. Jenick, David, and matter of fact, it was the 2 Davids, David Hilliard, if I'm saying his last name correctly, the 2 Davids voted yes. Primarily, David Hilliard voted yes because he sees it as an economic boom, you know, to go ahead and put in the drainage basins now. And Mr. Jenick, David Jenick, did state that he was going to vote yes. But he even indicated at the time that he voted yes that it kind of went against his own personal opinion on this project. So the no votes, Lindell Peterson represented the county at that meeting. He really made no comments during the whole meeting, but he did vote no. And then from the city, you had myself and you had Steve Laurenti. Steve Laurenti is very well known for not being in favor of any TIFs, so I'll just leave that statement sit there. And then now we can come back to me, since I was on the TIF committee and I voted no. As Mr. Hague indicated, Dale Tech did talk quite a bit about the drainage utility, or surface water drainage. And he did state, you know, obviously the city plan does have a consideration. The future comprehensive plan and future land use has outlines for drainage basins and drainage usage. But further questions of Mr. Hague, and going back to this original TIF when it was developed and why the regional drainage basins were not originally included, was that at the time the developers and engineers that put this plan together opted to put drainage on each individual property. And Dale Tech was grilled on that, saying, why was that allowed if that's not a good practice? And that's where the clarification came in. That's perfectly good practice. It is allowed, and it was considered. So the drainage, whether it's on private property or if you do the regional drainage basins, either one are perfectly acceptable methods. And just because, and I think the further discussion came out and Mr. Dale Tech indicated that if you were to put in the individual properties, and the statement was made, eventually in the future, sometime the city would go back and put in regional drainage. Well, that's a guess, because as long as the drainage systems are being put in correctly based on the land usage that goes in, they'll be working just fine. The only time the city would go back and do that is if we ended up with a problem with regional drainage or any of our drainage issues. So primarily, I can let you know, there are 2 points why I voted no. One, anytime we get a TIF that is this old, I don't like to see opening up, or the possibility of opening it up for developers to come back and start adding more public improvements on existing TIFs. That's one thing that I have a concern about. The second reason is that based on the original TIF of 70 and the drainage that was being handled and outlined for the entire TIF based on personal properties, I did not hear where the regional drainage was an improvement or even better than was already designed in that TIF. So with that being said, also with Mr. Tegg's statements today, and he did make the same statements today that he did then, and that is due to the construction of his current project, you know, a lot of the earth has been moved and they're primed to put in a regional drainage basin, if not on that other property, at least on his property. And he said that, you know, it would be minimal cost at this time. I would just like to also throw out, if it's for the betterment of the city, the option's in your hands to put that regional drainage basin on your land, even if the second one doesn't get developed since it is off your land. So to me, whether you put in a single one for your property complex or the regional one would be in your best interest to look at the future for the city at this point. But besides that comment, just to let you know, those were the summary from the TIF committee.
Thanks, Amanda. That was enlightening. I have another speaker request from Kyle Treloar. If Kent gave us a very good history of this, if you could try to expand on any points you see fit.
Kyle Treloar with KTM Design. I've been working on this project through Dream Design and now with KTM and with Altera as the developer the whole time through. Really, I wanted to speak on the regional nature of these ponds and just exactly, you know, why we feel they're such a good idea right now. Let me see if I can. All right. And so both Kent and Patty have put together excellent summaries of the numbers. I think that's all fairly well understood. Like Kent said, with the reallocation, they're just within the construction and the bidding of the project, as well as some of the timeframes here. Some of the items came in over budget, some of them came in under budget. To make everything balance out, we're asking to realign some of those capital costs above. But then to the regional detention ponds, we had this map shown before. As you can see, we have the North Detention Pond up here. This is, let's see. All right. What's that? Oh, push harder. There. All right, so we got the north one, and we got the south one. And just to kind of lay this out, this has been studied. This isn't something that was identified, during this project. These are regional detention basins as identified in the East Highway 79 Landfill Drainage Design Basin Plan. This is the regional detention plan for the City of Rapid City, adopted by the City of Rapid City in 2005. As you can see, this is an extensive drainage basin. It runs from Highway 16 here on the west all the way to Highway 79 on the east. It encompasses many, many acres. This is the area that we're most concerned with here. This is essentially the location of the sewer main within this TIF district. Here's Highway 16. As you can see, in this design plan, 2 regional ponds were identified. We've got this element right here and this element right here. The first one was detention cell 390. This is just kind of the basic background, boring numbers, but essentially this basin is handling in some or in full regional detention from both west of Highway 16, east of Highway 16, all the way to where the sewer main was constructed. Also, as Kent was alluding to, with the construction of the sewer main, the drain pipes were installed underneath the embankment. So a good portion of this project's already been constructed, just in the nature of constructing the sewer main. What we're asking for now is to basically come back in, do some rough grading to kind of form these ponds up a little bit, and drop an engineered outflow structure to meter the flow through the culverts that have already been installed. The second detention cell, this is just your basic hydrographs, more of that boring drainage stuff that you guys have already got quite a bit on this morning. The second detention cell, 397. This is the one that we'd call the south detention cell. This is this guy right here. Very similar situation. The embankment and the culverts have already been installed as part of the drainage system that was required to put in the sewer system. We're coming back in and seeing if, at this point in time, if we can do a little extra grading and then add that outflow structure on there to provide regional detention for, most of this area here. Once again, we're not talking about just any one particular person's property. This is many, many acres, excuse me, both west of Highway 16, east of Highway 16, through this entire region. Here's a preliminary design plan for the north detention pond. This is going to illustrate really well exactly what's already been constructed. One, this here is an embankment that had to be built basically to hold the sewer main. As you can see here, the culvert with a flow dissipator was installed. That's already in the ground right now. Basically what we're looking at now is a new riser system to meter that flow and provide that regional benefit. Basically the same thing on the south detention pond. These were provided to Heavy, who has done the construction work so far. That's where the construction numbers have come from. That's where the budget's coming from. So, like Kent said, this has all been well developed and is fairly well understood. And now to kind of go back to the benefits of allowing individual drainage, detention, and stormwater quality ponds on each lot versus the regional. There's a reason why the regional is preferred. One, it takes care of an entire region's detention. You have one spot for maintenance. You have one spot, basically one facility to watch, to take care of. With the individual sites, every site is using a little bit of land. Well, if you add up that land from every single site, that turns into a much larger footprint than a regional detention. So when you're talking about commercial properties, which is what we have here, every square foot counts. So if you can save some area and move that to a regional detention, you're increasing your tax base in the long run. Kind of a second point, the original drainage design basin plan didn't contemplate stormwater quality, and the stormwater quality is a little bit different than your stormwater control. Basically with stormwater control, you have to regulate the developed flow and maintain the current natural flow. So you're maintaining the current release rates. Stormwater quality is a kind of a newer thing, especially in our region, where we want to really watch the quality of the stormwater. So as rain drops and falls on a parking lot, it picks up oil, it picks up salts, it picks up all sorts of chemicals and dirt and soil. And one of the things that the EPA has regulated and would be incorporated into these ponds is regional stormwater quality control. So these detention elements, they would also be sized and designed to provide that quality control so that the water that flows into this particular facility is going to come out cleaner on the downstream side than it was before. So overall, that's kind of the quick explanation of what we have here. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kyle. I've got a wait up from Steve.
That's kind of why when I was on the TIF committee, I was looking at the whole thing. We're talking $218,000 to do it today, and we can do 2 detention ponds. Otherwise, you're going to have 10, 15, 20 of them, and as they build out, you're going to have more. And if you don't think that place is going to build out, you're crazy. We got $300 million going in there right now between those 3 projects. And that's just going to be the beginning of it. Excuse me. This place is going to boom. So if we can do the fix today for $218,000 and not affect the project cost, why wouldn't we do that? Now, there's no guarantee, as Amanda said, that this is going to fail sometime in the future, but if you got 10, 15, 20, and more coming, at some point in time, something's going to happen. If the city's going to do this sometime down the road, whether it's 10 years, 15, we're probably talking millions of dollars versus $218,000 to do it today. So as a member of the TIF committee, if I'm looking at the protection of the city and our dollars, this is the most economical way to go, would be the 218, which is not going to affect the overall project cost. And that's why I was going to recommend that we do it today.
Thank you, Steve. Any further questions, comments from the commission on this? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion on it.
I would move that we change this and that we approve the project.
Second.
Steve made the motion to approve the amendment
May I just get that clarification? What you're doing is recommending that staff, actually you're overturning the appeal, the TIF committee's denial of amending the project plan. So what I understand you saying is that you're recommending approval to direct staff to amend the project plan for reconsideration as soon as I can get that done. Thank you.
So if I'm correct in asking you this would then, a revised project plan would then come back to our
Correct.
body here before it moves anywhere else?
Correct.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor from Steve and Jan, and you guys seem okay with that. I wanted to note before we take any action, Karen has abstained from this item. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Galen and Mark, if I'm correct, opposed. Jan, Steve, and Linda for the motion. The motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate your time this morning.
Item 14.
Item 15. Oh, 14. 16 UR 006. This is a conditional use permit to allow an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a bridal boutique. This is property located at 804 St. Joseph Street, and it's zoned central business district. With that, I will show you some slides very quickly. As you can see, it is zoned central business district. It's adjacent to Mount Rushmore Road and St. Joseph Street. It's an existing 3-story building. There are 18 apartment units in the building. The bridal suite will be on the main floor at the front end of the building. This is shown as a downtown designation in our future land use plan, and it's identified within our comprehensive plan that these are the kinds of uses and mixed uses we want in our downtown area. We've got arterial streets on both sides of the property. This is just kind of a layout of the bridal suite area within that first floor. And there's some red designation, and that would be where the wine would be served for scheduled appointments only. The bridal boutique would be open Monday through Saturday, occasional Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and that those that schedule in appointments on Monday and Tuesday is when they would be offered an alcoholic beverage at the showing. Based on the criteria for on sale, they meet all of the separation requirements for that. This is a very minor impact into the area because it is in conjunction with the bridal boutique. We are recommending to approve with the stipulations identified in the staff report.
Move to approve stipulations.
Steve made the motion to approve with stipulations. Linda seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 15.
Thank you. Item number 15 is 16 UR 008, a conditional use permit to allow an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a cigar bar. This is for the existing Tinderbox and Vino 100 located downtown Rapid City. Property is zoned Central Business District, located on 7th Street between Main Street and St. Joseph. Look at the aerial view of the property. There are no additions or expansions proposed as part of this. Tinderbox and Vino 100 have been existing for quite some time. They're just now getting their conditional use permit to allow sale and service of beer, wine, and full liquor. I should also note that they have a sidewalk cafe permit that is included as a part of the service area in this conditional use permit. Near where Vicky was just at, so as you can see, Main Street and St. Joseph are principal arterial streets, and the area is designated for downtown development. This picture is a little misleading. The area that's outlined in yellow is the existing Tinderbox Suite 520 located on the right, or to the right of that, which would be south in real direction, is the location of Vino 100. As you can see, signs posted on the property with the sidewalk cafe permit. This is looking at 7th Street to the south, 7th Street to the north. I'm sorry, reverse that. This is south, the other picture was north. This is looking at the sidewalk cafe from both directions as well. Across the street at the two existing businesses. Its downtown district is seen as the appropriate district to allow an on-sale liquor establishment, and the Vino 100 and Tinderbox have been operating in the downtown for quite some time as legally non-conforming businesses. They're now bringing themselves in for a conditional use permit to come into compliance with the requirements of Rapid City Municipal Code. Staff is recommending that this application be approved with the stipulations noted in the staff report. Staff's available for questions at this time.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions for staff?
Move to approve.
Steve made the motion to approve. Galen seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Discussion items, anything?
No additional items.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Eric?
I'll make it. Ah. Eric made the motion, Linda seconded. All those in favor?
One person.
Oh, sorry, Tim.
Yeah,
We didn't vote.
ignoring me over here. I just want to take an opportunity this morning to introduce Tammy Stottle. Tammy is an addition to the Fire and Life Safety Division. She was promoted to Chief Deputy Fire Marshal last month, I believe, and she replaces Rich Broderick, which left our division a couple of weeks ago. So I want to introduce her. You may see her face, smiling face here from time to time as my replacement in my absence. So anyway, Tammy, any words of wisdom?
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. We have to sign this.